Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I've been sharing with you some thoughts on Gog and Magog. I appreciate your kind remarks, both on Facebook as well as the many private emails that I've been sent. It's really gratifying to know that my thoughts are helpful to you. Don't forget, if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to make, specifically a question that you would like for me to address here in my YouTube Morning Musings, feel free to send me an email. Go to my websites, www.eschatology.org or www.bibleprophecy.com. Send me an email with your question, and I'll look at it and consider it. One question that I have received is concerning the source of biblical eschatology. Now, I was raised in the amillennial world, fifth generation, and I was raised believing that God was essentially through with Israel at the cross. The law of Moses ended at the cross, that all New Testament eschatology were, all those promises were, quote, new promises. And amillennialist, very prominent amillennialist, Kim Riddlebarger, says that God completed all of his promises to Israel, and beginning with the church, he set in place a new set of promises. Well, that's the view that I was raised in. And others, well, virtually all, this is amazing, virtually all futurist eschatologies say the law of Moses passed away at the cross. Then, amazingly, what do? Even the amillennialist, they go to the Old Testament to prove that Jesus is coming again. In other words, they go to the law of Moses, which is supposedly a now dead covenant, supposedly a now dead law, no longer applicable, but they quote it to say it hasn't been fulfilled and we're still looking for it. The indisputable fact is that there are no eschatological hopes and promises separate from, distinct from, divorced from God's Old Covenant promises made to Israel. Paul said his doctrine of the resurrection was from the law and the prophets, Acts 24, 14 and 15. Peter said his hope of the second coming, the time of the consummation of the restoration of all things, would be the fulfillment of all of the prophets who had ever spoken. Acts 3, 21 to 24. Oh, by the way, he also said that his hope of the second coming to bring salvation would be in fulfillment of the Old Covenant prophets. 1 Peter 1, 10 to 12. Peter's hope of the day of the Lord, he says, was simply a reminder of what the prophets who have written before had said, the Old Covenant prophets, 2 Peter chapter 3, 1 and 2. And he specifically quotes from Isaiah 65 to 66. John, in the book of Revelation, as he writes about the imminent fulfillment of his vision, says that in the sounding of the seventh trumpet, the mystery of God is foretold by the prophets would be fulfilled. So you see, the New Testament writers are very clear that their eschatological hope was taken from, based on, and was not different from God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel. Let me say this kindly. If you have an eschatological doctrine that is not based upon, taken directly from God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel, you've got the wrong eschatology. Paul said, I preach nothing but the hope of Israel found in Moses and the prophets. Acts 26, 21 and following. You know what that means? That means if your doctrine of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 isn't from the Old Testament, you need to look again. That means if your doctrine of the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 is not taken from the Old Testament, you need to look again. This here is really foundational. Let me say again, all three futurist eschatologies say the law of Moses passed away in the first century. And yet they then turn around and they appeal to that ostensibly dead covenant, that ostensibly dead law, for their future eschatology. Folks, if a law or a covenant has been abrogated, annulled, and if it's dead, guess what? Its promises are dead. I hope you'll give this some serious thought. I hope the answer helps a little bit. Thanks so much for joining me for this morning's musings. We'll see you on the flip side.